I'll be reading this document from foxnews.com. Arrest report, Frisco Police Department. 7200 Stone Brook Parkway, Frisco, Texas. 75034, Frisco Police Department. Arrest report. Arrest number 2500829. Incident number 250399961. Arrest agency ID FPD. Location 6927-A Stadium Lane, Frisco, Texas. Arrest time, date, time arrested, April 2nd, 2025, 10:01. Status adult, arrest type, on view arrest. No drug use, no alcohol use. Disposition held for local prosecution. Name, Karmelo Sincere Anthony. Height, 5'09", weight, 130, hair color black, eye color brown, race B for black, age 17, sex male, born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Charges. Charge type 1, first degree felony. Section PC 19.02C, murder. Incident number 250399961. State code 09990030. Murder. Bond $0.00 or fine $0.00. Narratives. Media. Date April 2nd, 2025, 17:04 or 5:04 p.m. Officer Eduardo Cortez. Adult male was taken into custody following a stabbing call on FISD property. Initial narrative. Date April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. On April 2nd, 2025, at 1001 hours, I, Stanley School Resource Officer E. Cortez, heard over the radio dispatch call out a stabbing call at David Kendall Stadium, 6927 A Stadium Lane, Frisco, Collin County, Texas. FPD call notes indicated that an athlete was stabbed. The suspect was reported as being a black male, wearing a gray hoodie and blue sweatpants. I immediately left my office and ran across the Stowley Middle School parking, 6927 Stadium Lane, Frisco, Texas, toward a southwest entrance into the stadium. As I entered the stadium, two high school-age students informed me that the victim was on the north end of the stadium by the bleachers under a Memorial High School tent. I did not identify these students. Next, I proceeded toward the north end of the stadium, visitor's side, on foot. As I got closer to the north end, I could see the Memorial High School tent with multiple individuals under the tent. Once I arrived onto the north side bleachers, an adult male who was on the track pointed out the suspect. I was not able to identify that witness. The individual that was pointed out to me was a black male wearing a gray hooded sweater and dark-colored Nike pants. The suspect at this point was on the end of page 1, beginning page 2. Track on the north end. There was a chain link fence that separated me from the suspect. I gave the suspect instructions to keep his hands up in the air. During this time, the suspect said verbally out loud, quote, "I was protecting myself," end quote. It should be noted that I had not questioned him about the incident when he made that comment. I asked him if he had any weapons, and he said no. I patted him down for weapons while we were walking along the fence, and I did not locate any on his person. I instructed the male to continue walking along the fence, which he complied, toward an area where there was an opening in the fence that led off the track. While walking him off the track, the suspect also said, quote, he was putting, excuse me, he put his hands on me, end quote. I then detained the suspect in handcuffs, handcuffed behind his back, and had him sit down on the ground. Officer A. Ricci, or Ricci, after he gave me consent, no, excuse me, Officer A. Ricci had arrived on scene at that time. I conducted another pat down of his person and then searched his person after he gave me consent. No weapons were located. While the suspect sat on the ground, I advised that I had the alleged suspect. The suspect then responds and says, quote, I'm not alleged, I did it, end quote. Next, Officer Ricci, or Ricci, and I walked the suspect to patrol vehicle number 2412. This is Officer A's patrol vehicle, which was on the northeast gate of Kirkendall Stadium. As we were walking to the squad car, the suspect was emotional and said, quote, he put his hands on me. I told him not to, end quote. I did not question the suspect about the incident while he was escorted to the patrol vehicle. I searched his person once again, and I had him sit in the back seat area, driver's side of patrol vehicle number 2412. While the suspect was in the back seat, I noticed fresh blood on his middle finger. I verbally acknowledged that I saw the blood out loud so that it would be captured on my body-worn camera. It should also be noted that the suspect asked me, quote, is he going to be okay, end quote, while he was in the back seat. I then identified the suspect. He provided his name and date of birth verbally as Karmelo Anthony, in parentheses, B/M, in parentheses, with a date of birth of redacted, which I ran through FPD dispatch. Officer J. Hancock arrived on scene and remained with me and the suspect at this point. Karmelo was then checked via a school database for FISD students to also confirm his identity. The identifying information he provided matched the individual I had in custody, Karmelo Anthony. Next, I was advised by Sergeant Holland to transport the subject to the Frisco PD jail. Officer Hancock and I transported him to the FPD jail. Again, I did not question Karmelo about the incident. Upon arriving at the Frisco jail, Karmelo was escorted in the intake area. FPD jail staff changed him out into jail attire. I remained with the jail staff the entire time that he was changed over. The clothes that Karmelo was wearing was placed in an FPD paper evidence bag. The clothes remained in my possession from this point on. Upon Karmelo being placed into a jail cell, I continued to keep possession of his clothes. I returned to my patrol number 2412 along with Officer Hancock, which was in the FPD Sally Port, and placed Karmelo's clothes in the back trunk area. I drove patrol vehicle number 2412 out of the Sally Port and parked the squad car in the FPD patrol parking area. Karmelo's clothes remained in the trunk area of vehicle number 2412. FPD crime scene technician K. Dillard then took possession of Karmelo's clothes. I added my body-worn camera to the case. I have no further information to report. Supplemental. Date April 2nd, 2025, 1704. Officer Allison Ricci. On April 2nd, 2025, 1001 hours, I, Officer Ricci, number 3806, was wearing a full Frisco police uniform, and I was operating a fully marked Frisco police vehicle, number 2412. At about that time, I was dispatched to the report of a stabbing at David Quay Kendall or Q Kendall Stadium, 8825 7th Street, Frisco, Collin County, Texas. Frisco Police Dispatch advised an athlete had been stabbed. The suspect was described as a black male wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt and blue sweatpants. I responded Code 3 from the area of El Dorado Parkway and Frisco Street. I arrived on scene at approximately 1005 hours. When I arrived on scene, I approached the track/field area and saw Officer Cortez kneeling next to a black male wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt and blue sweatpants. The male, later identified as Karmelo Anthony, redacted, was in handcuffs and was seated on the sidewalk by the entrance to the track. As I approached Officer Cortez stated Anthony was the alleged suspect. Anthony then made a spontaneous statement and stated, quote, "I am not alleged, I did it," end quote. Officer Cortez conducted a PAT search of Anthony's person to ensure Anthony did not have any weapons and found nothing of evidentiary value. Officer Cortez and I then walked Anthony to my pre-search patrol vehicle, and Anthony was seated in the rear driver's side compartment of my patrol vehicle. While walking to my patrol vehicle, Anthony made another spontaneous statement and asked if what happened could be considered self-defense. I replied by telling Anthony I did not know what happened. It should be noted the in-car camera in my patrol vehicle was activated prior to Anthony being placed in my patrol car. While Officer Cortez assisted Anthony into my patrol vehicle, I noticed Anthony had blood on his left middle finger. I grabbed my department-issued digital camera and took a photograph of Anthony's hands. I later uploaded the photograph to the crime scene folder under this case number. Officer Cortez remained with my patrol vehicle and Anthony while I provided assistance with scene security. Nothing further from this officer. End of page 2, beginning page 3. Date, April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. Officer Will Otis. On Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, at around 1001 hours, Frisco Police Department officers were dispatched to Frisco Independent School District, FISD, David Q. Kendall Stadium, 6927 Stadium Lane, Pound A, Frisco, Collin County, Texas, in reference to a stabbing victim call. Frisco Police Department Emergency Communications was receiving an emergency call regarding an athlete that was stabbed. The originally unknown assailant was a black male wearing a gray hooded and blue sweatpants and also had a goatee and short hair. The subject was possibly wearing Centennial High School attire, as it was believed he was a student there for the sporting event. This had all taken place on the visitors' side of the stadium, north side, and the victim was under the Memorial High School memorial tent in the bleachers. At around this same time, School Resource Officer SRO Cortez arrived on scene and began assisting the victim, trainers, and the other parties. Officer Cortez also advised on the radio that he also had the suspect. Sergeant Otis was working the 50s sector as the sergeant. He was in full Frisco Police Department uniform with distinct patches and badge and a police duty belt. He was also in a marked Frisco Police Department patrol vehicle, number 2315. He was relatively close to the call and placed himself on it at around 1002 hours and responded to the call with his patrol vehicle's overhead emergency lights and sirens activated. He arrived to the call at around 1006 hours. Sergeant Otis arrived to the stadium and began walking up to the location. At around this time, Officer Cortez and Officer Ricci, excuse me, Rick, my apologies, I don't know how to pronounce the name properly. Officer Ricci were walking a black male subject, the suspect, away from the stadium. The suspect was crying hysterically. Please see the other involved officers' narratives for their involvement. Sergeant Otis was up to the visitor bleachers and observed the victim being treated by Frisco Fire Department (FFD) personnel and also the athletic trainers. The weather began to turn and it began to heavily downpour rain. At this time, some of the FISD staff moved the memorial tent to cover the victim and the FFD personnel. Sergeant Otis began using his city-issued phone to snap crime scene photos to preserve as much of the scene as possible due to the weather and the large gathering of people that were involved in the incident. Other officers began to set up a crime scene with tape, moving non-essential personnel out of the immediate area. The officers on scene were informed that the knife that was used was tossed and was still believed to be somewhere else. Eventually, one of the witnesses said they remember seeing it on the closest to the aisle, partly open. The rain began to come down again heavily, and it was determined that instead of moving the knife, the officers would cover it with a large blue tarp. Sergeant Otis assisted in preserving the immediate crime scene as much as possible, while the other personnel tended to the victim and eventually transported him. At around this time, Officer Wetzel had the crime scene log and began logging the individuals on the call to the best of his abilities. Lieutenants Crawford and Pemberton relieved Sergeant Otis of the scene. Sergeant Otis went back to the police department to download his body cam and the photos he took with the city-issued phone. Sergeant Otis's city-issued phone had a total of 33 photos that were used to document the incident scene. During the download, the initial photos formatting was incompatible with the crime scene folder. He re-downloaded the photos that he took and they were able to be saved properly for preservation of evidence. At this time, there is nothing further to add to this report. Date, April 2nd, 2025, 1704. Officer Taylor Wetzel. On Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, Officer Taylor Wetzel, number 3698, was assigned to work patrol in the city of Frisco at approximately 1002 hours. I responded to the report of a stabbing at David Kuykendall Stadium, located at 8825 7th Street. The original call notes stated an athlete had been stabbed in the chest and that the suspect that stabbed the victim goes to Centennial High School. Athletic trainers were on site and were providing care to the victim and advised he was not conscious and not breathing. The notes also indicated that the suspect was a black male with a goatee and short hair wearing Centennial gear. I arrived on scene at approximately 1006 hours. When I arrived on scene, I grabbed a roll of crime scene tape from my trunk and proceeded to the visitors' bleachers where dispatch advised the victim was. While I was walking toward the visitors' bleachers, I was approached by a witness who identified himself as J. Redacted, began telling me what happened, and I asked him where the stabbing occurred. Redacted advised it happened under the Memorial High School pop-up tent in the visitors' bleachers. I immediately informed Sergeant Otis where the witness stated the stabbing occurred and gave him the crime scene tape to start securing the crime scene. I then had Redacted move to the walkway under the visitors' bleachers out of the rain to further speak with me. The following is a summary of my contact with Redacted. Redacted advised he was sitting under the Memorial High School pop tent with his team and was near. End of page 4, beginning, end of page 3, beginning page 4. The victim, Austin, and the suspect, who was later identified as Karmelo Anthony. Date of birth, redacted. Anthony was from Centennial High School and was sitting under the Memorial High School tent. Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under their team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, and reached inside, and proceeded to tell Anthony, quote, "Touch me and see what happens," end quote. No one really thought Anthony really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Anthony, and then Anthony told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled out what Redacted recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Austin began grabbing his chest and telling everyone to get help. Redacted advised he did not know Anthony's name, but stated another Memorial track member, P. Redacted, was friends with Anthony, and he could identify Anthony. Redacted described Anthony as a black male, skinny, with possibly a goatee, short puffy hair, and wearing a Centennial High School clothing. This concluded my contact with Redacted. I then was instructed to start a crime scene log. I retrieved a crime scene log from my patrol vehicle and began starting the crime scene log. I was later relieved by Officer Charles, who took over the crime scene log, and I cleared the scene. Nothing further. Attached to original report. Date, April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. Officer Jerry Hancock. Today, April 2nd, 2025, while working as the SRO at Independence High School, 10555, Independence Parkway, Collin County, a weapons call was dispatched over the air that detailed a stabbing occurred at Coop Kendall Stadium in Frisco, Texas. After hearing more dispatch call information, I drove to the scene. While en route, I heard Officer Cortez say he has the suspect in custody. When I got on scene, I looked for Officer Cortez and went straight to him to hold security with the suspect that he had cuffed and secure in the police squad. Multiple witnesses were providing statement to officers where the stabbing occurred at the Memorial High School track tent. Only a short time later, Officer Cortez and myself escorted the suspect, Karmelo Sincere Anthony, to the Frisco Adult Holding Facility. Anthony was transitioned off to the jail staff without incident. All jail paperwork was completed, and CID took the investigation from there. Date: April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. Officer Alvin Fisher. On Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, at about 1005 hours, I, Alvin Fisher, number 3696, was dispatched to 6927 Stadium Lane, Pound A, Frisco, Collin County, Texas. In regard to a stabbing, the notes stated an athlete had been stabbed in the chest, was unconscious, and not breathing. When I arrived, the crime scene was already marked off and the suspect was in custody. I began asking people if they were witnesses to anything. I made contact with Hunter M. Redacted, and then E. Redacted, P. Redacted, B. M. Redacted. They were both breathing heavily and crying due to the nature of events. They were with coaches on the field, and it was pouring down rain. We made the decision to relocate to a locker room just to the east to get out of the rain. Once in there, things calmed down a little bit. However, they were still hysterical and could not really talk. In there, I learned Hunter was the brother of the victim. I attempted to ask them both what had happened. I could not really get anything out of Hunter, but Redacted stated he wanted to speak. I asked him what happened, and he stated they were all sitting on the bleachers under a Memorial High School tent, when another male, who he did not know, walked over and sat under the tent. Redacted then said Austin, the victim, told this male that since he did not go to Memorial, he had to leave the tent. Austin and the male went back and forth, and then Austin stood up and pushed the male to get him out of the tent. Redacted had said during this time of arguing, the male was reaching around in his bag he had. It was at this time the male took out a knife and stabbed Austin, and then left the scene. This was all Redacted remembered when he talked to me. After this, I then stood by with 3 athlete witnesses until CID arrived and interviewed them. I was then relieved by an SRO and went back to patrol. Nothing further. Moving on to the next officer testimony. Date April 2nd, 1704, 2025. Officer Mike Crawford. On April 2nd, 2025, at approximately 1000 hours, I, Lieutenant Mike Crawford, number 3095, was dispatched to the Kukendall Stadium at 6927-A Stadium Lane in Frisco, Collin County, Texas, in reference to a stabbing call. I arrived on scene and observed medical personnel and several bystanders standing next to a subject later identified as the victim, Austin. Well, we know Austin Metcalf, but it's redacted. The medical personnel were actively engaged in life-saving measures with Mr. M. Redacted. I observed that a crime scene was created around the area and began collecting the names and contact information of the bystanders within the scene. I then met with Officer Wetzel and directed him to begin a crime scene log. As he was getting the needed paperwork, I took over his responsibilities of monitoring a witness, J. Redacted, to the event. Ultimately, the witness was taken to another area out of the rain, and Officer Charles took over the crime scene log, and I forwarded information about the bystanders to him. End of page 4, beginning page 5. From that point forward, I worked with coordinating response from SRO, CID, CSI, and PIO. I took no other action at the scene. My body-worn camera did not activate when I initially arrived on scene, but I did activate it when I discovered it wasn't recording. While waiting with the witness, nothing further. Next, officer testimony. April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. Officer Jacob Schall's. On Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, I, Officer Schall's, was working as the SRO at the Student Opportunity Center. At approximately 1001 hours, I was dispatching to a stabbing that occurred at David Kuykendall Stadium, located at 6927 Stadium Lane, Frisco, Collin County, Texas. It should be noted that my location is approximately 200 yards from the stadium. Upon my arrival, I tried to get an updated location of the suspect. I could not see Officer Cortez when I arrived. Officer Cortez informed over the radio that he had the suspect in custody. At this time, I turned my attention to the victim. Multiple FISD trainers were already performing CPR. I could see blood on and around the victim. At this time, medics arrived and began life-saving measures. I coordinated with other officers on scene to secure the location. By this time, the students and FISD staff had cleared the area. I used crime scene tape and began to tape off the area. It began to rain harder at this time. Sergeant Otis and myself moved a Memorial High School tent over the medics and the victim to attempt to preserve an evidence that we could. A Memorial coach approached me and informed me that he was with a student who claimed to see the entire altercation. I told the coach to stick with the student and that we would need to get him to the police station to give a statement. The student quickly informed me that he knew where the suspect threw the knife and pointed me to its location. I located the knife with Sergeant Otis and could see blood on the knife. I quickly used my city-issued phone to take pictures before the rain could wash the blood away. Sergeant Otis located a blue tarp, and we decided that we should cover the knife without touching it in an attempt to preserve any evidence. It was windy and raining hard. Once we positioned the tarp over the knife, I reached down and grabbed a backpack left in the stands to weigh the tarp down and threw it up by where Sergeant Otis was positioning the tarp. It was later discovered that the backpack I threw up onto the tarp was the suspect's backpack. It was the only Centennial High School backpack located within all of the Memorial High School backpacks in that area of the stands. After securing the scene with crime scene tape and attempting to preserve as much evidence as possible, I assisted other officers with locating other possible witnesses. Of course, Wetzel was maintaining scene security while I was assisting the other officers. After the medics transported the victim, I relieved him of that post so he could go back to patrol. I maintained scene security until the call was cleared. Photos will be uploaded to the crime scene folder, and my body cam will be downloaded at the end of the shift. No further information at this time. Next officer testimony. April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. Officer Kyle Pemberton. On April 2nd, 2025, at approximately 1004 hours, Lieutenant Kyle Pemberton, number 3411, responded to 6927 A Stadium Lane, Frisco, Collin County, Texas, in response to a reported stabbing. This location is a school stadium. Call notes advised a male had been stabbed and was unconscious. Upon arrival, several officers and medical personnel were attending to the victim, who was laying on the ground of the stadium bleachers. I coordinated the Frisco PD response and trying to establish a crime scene. The knife reported to have been used in the assault was located by another officer in the bleachers. Shortly after my arrival, a large downpour of rain began. I directed several officers to use a tarp found at the scene to cover the location of the knife. I remained on scene until the victim was transported and the crime scene was established. NFI. Next officer testimony or statement. April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. Officer Justin Newton. On April 2nd, 2025, I responded to Texas Health Plano to assist with this case. I was tasked with meeting the ambulance at the hospital. I arrived prior to the ambulance and waited for them to arrive. They arrived at 1046 hours with the victim, Austin Metcalf, who was brought into the trauma bay for treatment. At 1053 hours, Dr. Chow pronounced Austin deceased. Once he was pronounced, the staff stopped treatment and disconnected cords and tubes from the machines without removing anything from the body itself. While on scene, I took possession of clothing worn by Austin and maintained possession of the items until CSI Dillard took them from me. While on scene, Officer Landon requested assistance in lifting the sheets off the body, to take photos. I then placed the sheets back when completed. I then stood by in the room for security while Officer Landon, Officer Hernandez, and CSI Dillard took additional photos. At one point, they rolled the body and removed shorts from Austin, which were bagged and stayed in my custody until CSI took them. At 1,324 hours, or 1324 hours, family was allowed into the scene to view the body. I was informed by staff and officers that they would be allowed to touch the head and feet of Austin, which they did. At 1337 hours, nurses from the hospital bagged Austin in a, quote, body bag, end quote. At 1515 hours, the transport service for the medical examiner arrived and took possession of the body. Tag. End of page 5, beginning page 6. Number 1016978 was placed on the bag and secured. I took notes during this time which were scanned to the report and booked as evidence. I turned in the crime scene log to be scanned to the report. At the conclusion of the call, I took my camera off of covert mode and went to turn it off. At that point, I learned the camera had failed to activate. Due to it being on covert mode, I did not see the indicator lights on the top of the camera. Next officer statement. Date, April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. Officer Andrew Higgins. On April 2nd, 2025, I, Officer Higgins, was working as the desk officer at 7200 Stonebrook Parkway, Frisco, Collin County, Texas. At approximately 10:42 hours, redacted H redacted, WM redacted, walked into the main lobby stating that he had witnessed the stabbing and was told to come to the lobby to complete a witness statement. I gave H redacted a voluntary witness statement, which he worked on until detectives arrived to speak with him. H redacted left with detectives, and I returned to my normal duties. Nothing further at this time. Next officer statement. Date, April 2nd, 2025, 17:04. Officer Thomas Craig. On Tuesday, April 2nd, 2025, at approximately 1001 hours, I, reporting officer Thomas Craig, number 3517, School Resource Officer, Liberty High School, was at Heritage High School and heard via radio that a FISD student had then stabbed at the address of 6927 Stadium Lane, Kendall Stadium. I immediately responded to the scene. Upon arrival, I first made contact with Officer Cortez, who was standing next to a marked police vehicle. Officer Cortez advised he had detained the suspect and he was in the patrol vehicle. I then responded to the victim's scene that was in the north bleachers. As I walked up, I noticed Frisco Fire Department personnel was attempting to provide life-saving measures to a subject later identified as Memorial High School Austin Metcalf. As the other officers worked the scene, I was asked to respond to the stadium's medical/locker room area and keep the following Memorial High School students/witnesses separated until detectives could speak with them. J redacted, E redacted, P redacted, M redacted, N redacted. While with them, I was told to take their cell phones from them and later turn them over to Sergeant Bissonnette. After being relieved, I was asked to make contact with all FISD athletes that had been placed on school buses. Below is a list of students who identified themselves as witnesses to the stabbing of Austin Metcalf. Bus number redacted. Text TXLP redacted. Lebanon Trail High School girls track. Redacted, 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 redacted. So I will just skip over. These are just different bus numbers. This one from going to Liberty High School boys track. Next one, Liberty High School girls track. Third, for the fourth bus, Memorial High School boys track. Fifth bus, Frisco High School boys track. Sixth bus, bus number 105. And then there's, looks like maybe the Texas license plate. Independence High School boys and girls track. And the names of individuals are redacted. And the seventh one, end of page 6, beginning page 7, is from Emerson High School girls track, and another redaction. I was also met by the following coaches who advised they witnessed the incident. Macol Gonzalez, Centennial High School coach, heard suspect confess to stabbing victim. Vincent Hooper, Heritage High School coach, heard suspect confess to stabbing victim. Lakeisha Collin, Independence High School coach, witnessed the incident. Mindy Yeatman, Independence High School coach, witnessed the incident. After completing this task, I cleared the scene. NFI. Thomas Craig, number 3517. Next officer statement, April 2nd, 2025, 1704. Officer Alejandro Aviles. On April 2nd, 2025, Sergeant Aviles responded to a stabbing call at 6927 Stadium Lane. Upon arrival, I provided scene security and assisted with keeping civilians away from the crime scene. I maintained this position until I was relieved by CID detectives and cleared the scene. Nothing further. Date, April 3rd, 2025, 5:40. Officer Joshua Miller. On April 2nd, 2025, at approximately 1000 hours, I, Sergeant Joshua Miller, number 3542, was dispatched to a stabbing call located at 6927 Stadium Lane, Kendall Stadium. Call notes stated that one student was stabbed in the chest by another student. Upon my arrival at the location, my only duty was to provide scene security. As the Frisco medic was leaving the location, I assisted in moving people out of the way for the medic to be able to drive through. Shortly after, I cleared the scene. Nothing further. Sergeant Joshua Miller, number 3542. And that is the end of this document. Next, I will go to read another one. Let me just switch over. So this is from World News Group. This is the Register of Actions, case number 296-83565-2025. State of Texas versus Karmelo Sincere Anthony. Case type filed by indictment. Date filed June 24, 2025. Location 296 District Court. Party information. Defendant Karmelo Sincere Anthony. State, the state of Texas. Lead attorneys blank, pro C blank, and then Greg Williams. Greg Willis. Charge information. Charges. Karmelo Sincere Anthony, 1. Murder. Statute 19.02c. Level, first degree felony. Date, April 2nd, 2025. Events and orders of the court. Dispositions. June 9, 2026. Plea. Judicial Officer Roach John R. Jr. 1. Murder. Not guilty. June 9, 2026. Disposition. Judicial Officer Roach John R. Jr. 1. Murder. Convicted. Not guilty. Plea. Jury verdict. June 9, 2026. D.C., Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Prison. Judicial Officer Roach John R. Jr. Murder. Confinement to commence June 9, 2026. 35 years. TDC, Department of Corrections. Jail credit 12 days. Other events and hearings. April 2nd, 2025. Arrest fee on site, Sheriff. April 7, 2025. Letter of representation. April 15, 2025. Approving bond by Sheriff. 2025-06083. June 24, 2025. Case filed by indictment. OCA. June 25, 2025. Order. Order to redact. June 25, 2025. Letter of representation. TFDA. Indigent packet. Attorney appointment eligible. June 26, 2025. Notice to appear issued. Defense application for subpoena. There was 4 submissions. It's listed 4 times, and then subpoena. Frisco ISD on cert. Subpoena. Frisco ISD on cert. And it is listed just like that another 2 times for a total of 4. June 30, 2025. Letter of representation. July 18, 2025. Docket control. No appearances required. 9 a.m. Judicial Officer Roach John R. Jr. Attorney appearance only. July 28, 2025. Order, gag order. July 29, 2025. Order, protective order. September 24, 2025. Defense application for subpoena. And then subpoena, Frisco ISD. Sorry, for the application for subpoena, it says Duces Tecum. But for the subpoena, Frisco ISD, it says on cert. That's the end of page 1, beginning page 2. And then it says Frisco Police Department, unserved. Next, April 16, 2026. Order. Order regulating trial proceedings, media access, security, and courtroom decorum. May 18, 2026. Amended order. Amended order regulating trial proceedings, media access, security, and courtroom decorum. June 1st, 2026. Jury trial, 9 a.m. Judicial Officer Roach John R. Jr. General docket entry. Jury pool seated. Jury panel questionnaires distributed. Jury chosen, OCA. June 2nd, 2026. General docket entry. Jury panel list received. June 3rd, 2026. General docket entry. Jury panel seated. Voir dire completed. Jury selected. June 4, 2026. General docket entry. Defendant pleads not guilty. Jury sworn. Opening statements begun. June 4, 2026. General docket entry. Opening statements concluded. State's witness testimony has begun. Trial court certification of defendant's right of appeal. Notice. Stipulation of evidence. June 5th, 2026. General docket entry. State's witness testimony continued. June 6th, 2026. General docket entry. State's witness testimony continued. General docket entry. State rests its case. Defense asked court for direct verdict. Court has denied request. Defense witness testimony has begun. June 8, 2026. General docket entry. Defense witness testimony continued. General docket entry. Defense rests its case. June 9, 2026. General docket entry. Guilt, innocence, jury charge read aloud to the jury. Closing arguments have begun. General docket entry. Closing arguments concluded. Jury sent to deliberate. General docket entry. Jury verdict. Guilty of murder. General docket entry. Punishment phase of trial has begun. State rests its case in punishment. Defense witness testimony has begun. General docket entry. Defense witness testimony concluded. Defense rests. General docket entry. Punishment jury charge read aloud to the jury. Closing statements has begun. General docket entry. Closing statements concluded. Jury sent to deliberate. General docket entry. Jury punishment verdict. 35 years confinement in Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Court sentences the defendant to 35 years confinement in TDCJ. Defendant given 12 days back time credit. Jury charge. Jury instructions. Jury charge. Punishment jury instructions. June 10, 2026. Bond discharged. Bill of cost. Peremptory challenges. Jury separation agreement. Juror questions, answers. Judges list. Financial information. Defendant Karmelo Sincere Anthony. Total financial assessment. Total payments and credits. Balance due as of June 10, 2026. There's three numbers. First one is $407.60. That is for total financial assessment. Total payments and credits is $102.60. And the balance due is $305.00. So the rest of these is just a list of transactions from regarding different individuals, and it leads to the $305.00 number, as we saw at the bottom of page 2. And that is the end of this document, Register of Actions, for the state of Texas versus Karmelo and Sierra.